Well, welcome to the Steve Mag's Muscle Car Show podcast, and I'm holding this Plymouth Superbird up because it's episode 43. And yes, we continue our exploration into the world of Plymouth muscle car history from my 2013 book, Steve Magnanti's 1001, I keep saying that, 1001 Muscle Car Facts. And we left off last time at fact number 625, so we'll pick up at 626 in just a moment. But first, I want to thank our sponsors, High Octane Classics, the Northeast's largest dealership of muscle cars and supercars, and they're located at 143 Washington Street in Auburn, Massachusetts. High Octane Classics buys and sells and services muscle cars and exotics. So give them a call at 508-859-4515. And of course, be sure to check out my YouTube channel, the Steve Magnanti YouTube channel, which you might be watching right now. But if you're not and you're listening to this on our podcasts, well, at stevemagnanti.com, the Steve Magnanti YouTube channel, you'll see junkyard videos and all kinds of cool stuff. So check that out too. All right, well, let's get the ball rolling with this is from the, Plymouth Facts and, yes. Which one is it? Let's see here. Yeah, this is Legend and Lore. Or is it? Yeah, Legend and Lore. Body Interior? Yeah, sorry. Body and Interior. Yes, of course. Live studio stuff here. Okay, so Body and Interior Facts about Plymouths. Let's continue. Okay, fact 626. 1970s trivia here we go. Ever wonder why the E58 364 barrel Volare A57 Roadrunner and A67 Volare Super Coupe came with a single exhaust outlet? It's because the Volare Aspen F-body twins, the development engineers worked under the assumption that dual exhaust would never again be on the menu. Deep breathing V8s were seemingly gone forever in the early 1970s, and the expense of catalytic converters was likely to limit them to one catalytic converter per vehicle. Accordingly, the floor pan and gas tank designers specified a wide, shallow tank positioned close to the left side, driver's side frame rail. The exhaust was routed down the passenger side of the car and passed through the resulting gap. This worked fine for the slant 6 and 318 two barrels that made up 98% of Volare and Aspen output. But as for the 364 barrel minority, in 1979, Chrysler stepped up and approved dual catalytic converters and mufflers in a well-designed system until it reached the tailpipe. That's where the dual pipes merged over and behind the rear axle to feed a single tailpipe with a massive 3-inch diameter outlet. The few surviving systems that haven't rusted away are pretty intimidating for a single exhaust setup. Yeah, it's true. I remember back in the 1980s, late 70s, early 80s, I would see these, brand new, even police cars, anything with the E58 364 barrel. You'd see this big single exhaust pipe, like the Worcester City Police Department had some police cars with a big single exhaust pipe. And that's because the architecture of the vehicle wasn't conducive to dual exhaust. So that's how dark things were. And of course, now we have Hellcats, Demons, Challenger RTs, Scatbacks, Shakers, and not to mention, the Mustangs and Camaros and really everything else. Everything is dual exhaust. Minivans have dual exhaust now. So, we've come a long way since the smog 70s. Okay, let's move on. Fact number 627, more exhaust information. The most intimidating single exhaust layout of all time is found under the 1965 RO51 Hemi stock Belvedere 1 and the Dodge WO51 Hemi Charger 426 Racing cousin. Even though the B-body floor pan readily accepts a pair of conventional high-flow mufflers and dual exhaust, the lightweight race Hemi superstock cars came directly from the factory with a ridiculous but ingenious single cross-flow muffler position beneath the rear bumper. On the driver's side of the muffler case, a length of 2-inch diameter pipe makes a gentle 90-degree turn and vents spent gases. The simple layout was fed by a Y pipe joining the dual headers, which were meant to be uncapped. So does a single exhaust race Hemi actually run with the headers capped? Yes, I've seen it. But the Hemi sounds constipated, and unless the dual Hollies are jetted specifically for corked operation, plug fouling and cylinder misfire results within a few miles. and merely to satisfy the rulebook's mandate for street equipment. The big muffler also happened to be an excellent storage spot for about 80 pounds of molten or pelletized lead ballast. It is true, if you see a well-restored 1965 8990 Dodge or Plymouth, you'll see a wacky single exhaust pipe hanging down underneath the rear bumper, but it's a fact. And again, that big muffler was a very good place to hide some lead ballast, maybe 60 pounds for extra traction. But yeah, single exhaust and high performance, yeah, they kind of go hand in hand, but not most of the time. Okay, let's move on to fact 628. And again, this is body and interior, interesting stuff here. Okay, in his excellent book, Car Spy, legendary automotive spy photographer Jim Dunn's camera exposes numerous pre-production prototype test cars from Detroit and abroad. One of the most fascinating stories involves a bizarre Plymouth Prowler engineering mule fitted with a Jeep Wrangler body cap affixed to the rear half of the stock Prowler body. It seems the Proving Grounds test crew wasn't willing to brave winter test conditions in a standard open cockpit Prowler. So, a hastily cobbled fiberglass Wrangler hardtop was affixed to the chassis to keep the test engineers warm at the Chelsea, Michigan test track. Did Chrysler want the freaky Prowler publicized? No way. That's why Jim Dunn has a spy photo of this crazy creature. In fact, Jim Dunn, who wrote a great book, Car Spy, which is actually done by CarTech Books, the same people who did my wonderful books, The 1001 Muscle Car, Mustang, and Corvette Facts. Dunn's book, Car Spy, many of the photographs taken were from Dunn's ranch. He actually bought a piece of property that was part of, I believe, the Mesa, Arizona GM test track. He actually had a piece of land that was protruded into the test track. So he would stand there on his property over a fence and he could take pictures of GM mule cars, not Chrysler stuff, but GM mule cars zipping around, and it was perfectly legal, you know. But again, Jim Dunn, one of the legendary spy photographers, sneaking his camera into previews and getting shots of stuff that manufacturers weren't necessarily proud of. But again, a Prowler with a Jeep Wrangler body, yeah, Jim Dunn captured one in film. Pretty cool. Okay, moving on. Fact 629. Dealership service mechanics were undoubtedly grateful when Plymouth, along with Chrysler, DeSoto, and Dodge, switched from a floor-mounted to a hanging, suspended under the dash, brake pedal in 1955 and beyond. The relocated brake pedal was a consequence of the entirely new body and frame that focused on lower, sleeker styling, which was all part of Virgil Exner's forward-look design philosophy. Before the redesign, Plymouth positioned the brake master cylinder under the driver's floorboard, where adjustment and bleeding required several trips under the car. By contrast, the reduced cowl height of the sleeker 1955 body shell forced relocation of the brake cylinder to the firewall, where access and service was much, much easier to accomplish. And this is something that really throughout Detroit, you know, Ford, General Motors, Packard, Studebaker, they all for a good long time had their pedals sticking up through the floor, which is where they were first seen in the 1910s, 20s, 30s, 40s. And again, it was a very functional way of activating the pedals. The downside was, by poking through the floor, well, they allowed access to dust and moisture from under the car. Inevitably, it would work its way in, of course, rust, that kind of thing. And beyond that, the brake master cylinder was located right next to the pedal under the car. So today, we kind of have it good. We're almost spoiled by the fact that we open the hood of a car and we see the master cylinder on the firewall right there for bleeding. It's ready to rock. But that's a function of Detroit's switch from floor-mounted pedals to hanging pedals underneath the dash. Now we know. Okay, let's get back to full-sized C-body information with fact 630. Adding a subtle performance flair, all 1970 and 71 Sport Fury GTs and 1970 Fury S23s were equipped with a front chin spoiler. The stamped metal spoiler was 1.5 inches tall and nearly as wide as the chrome hoop bumper. Painted to match the body, this was the only application of a factory chin spoiler in the history of the Fury model name. Yeah, it's true that spoilers usually think the D80 chin spoiler on a Z28 or, you know, maybe a Corvette, of course, the chin spoiler built in from 1968 on up. And spoilers generally are attached to, you know, high-performance cars. Well, in some situations, the full-size Plymouth Fury was a high-performance car, the S23, and of course the Sport Fury. But yes, they had a little body-colored chin spoiler, which kind of gave the car a lower look, despite the fact that the ride height was the same as any other Fury. Okay, moving on. Let's get into the the Volare and Aspen with fact number 631. The 1975 and 76 Plymouth Valiant's A38 police package was only available in the four-door sedan body style. When fitted with the E58 364 barrel in federal 48 state trim, it was the only four-door Valiant ever offered with a factory-installed full-length dual exhaust system. Rated at 220 horsepower, the E58 Valiant was a mixed bag, though law enforcement appreciated its nimble, compact size handling and maneuverability, unlike same-year A38 Grand Fury and Fury police models, which benefited from additional frame welds and a rear crossmember reinforcement. The Valiant and its dark cousin were based on standard passenger car body shells. The result was chronic metal fatigue and front suspension failure in heavy fleet service. So, while most folks think of, Dart 340s, swingers, that stuff with dual exhaust, they had them. But four-door Darts, no dual exhaust systems except for those 75 and 76 four-door A38s, Valiants and Dart four-doors. In fact, Motor Trend in 1975-76 road tested one of those things. And it's a trip to see the two exhaust pipes coming out of the back of the car. But it's one of the very few, well, the only full-length dual exhaust on an A-body four-door at any time. Okay, let's get into roadrunners and station wagons. Did that stuff ever happen? This is fact 632. Did Plymouth ever offer a roadrunner station wagon? Sort of. While the classic 1968 through 75 Roadrunner was available only as a coupe, hardtop, or convertible, of course the convertible 1969-70 only, in 1978 Plymouth announced the Load Runner with an L, a Roadrunner-inspired appearance package offered on the Volare station wagon. Adding the Volare Roadrunner coupe's optional sport pack chin spoiler, fender flares, and tape stripes to the wagon was handled by Motortown, an off-campus vehicle modification center run by the father of the Pontiac GTO, Jim Wangers, responsible for similar decal supercars such as the Mustang Cobra II and Pontiac Can-Am. Wangers Motortown was also in charge of the Volare Roadrunner and Aspen RT vehicle conversion programs between 1976 and 1980. A number of Load Runner wagons were built between 1978 and 1980, probably a few hundred. Is that your phone, Chris? This is what we call studio verite. It's like cinema verite, but without the cinema in a studio. But yeah, I remember as a kid, Brookfield Motors, just down the road from our house or studio here in North Brookfield, Massachusetts, Brookfield Motors had a Load Runner in stock. It was a black car with gold graphics, but I remember seeing a wagon, a Volare wagon. Sorry, it's a Dodge Aspen wagon is what that one was. But it had the graphics on it. I says, wow, that's kind of weird. But so yeah, four-door Roadrunners, Plymouth dealers anyways, had the Load Runner. And a few were built. I saw one. Okay, fact 633 coming up in a second. But first, let's thank our sponsors at High Octane Classics, the Northeast's largest muscle car and supercar dealership, located at 143 Washington Street in Auburn, Massachusetts. High Octane Classics buys and sells and services muscle cars and exotics. Give them a call at 508-859-4515. Okay, let's get back to the show with fact 633. More Volare Roadrunner facts. The Volare Roadrunner Sport Pack Fender Flare Kit, mentioned in fact 632, is not the same as the body kit conjured for the 1978 Volare and Dodge Aspen Street Kit Car. The Kit Car flares are much larger and have flat outboard surfaces with simulated fastener mounting holes. The larger flares cover the hand-trimmed wheel openings necessary to clear the massive 15x8 steel wheels and GR 60x15 Goodyear GT radial tires. Other Kit Car specific body add-ons include a huge deck lid spoiler, deep chin air dam, fake four-corner hood pins, massive Richard Petty inspired 43 racing numbers supplied in the trunk, and 5 aluminum windshield locking tabs, none of which was shared with the more subtle Sport Pack. Shepherded by Chrysler Performance Planning honcho and former Ram Charger Dick Maxwell, the Kit Car was a handling and appearance package, not a high-powered muscle car. Said Maxwell in the November 1977 issue of Motor Trend magazine, quote, "We can't build a real race car anymore. Those days are gone," end quote. How true. Still, modern collectors have really begun to warm up to the kit car. Clean examples command in excess of $10,000, and rightly so. Now keep in mind, when I wrote this fact, number 633, and this book, the year was 2013, like, 11 years ago or so. And the deal is, today we do build race cars again. Dick Maxwell, who sadly passed away, by the way, on a motorcycle, and I had the misfortune, I guess, of writing his obituary. When I was at Hot Rod Magazine, I got an email from Dave Freiriger saying, hey, just heard that Maxwell was killed on his motorcycle. Would you be willing to write an obituary? Sure. I never knew or met Dick Maxwell, but I surely knew who he was, from the history of the Ram Chargers. So anyway, but when Dick Maxwell was still at Chrysler, he was the one who said that the days of real race cars are over. Well, if he could see the demon, the wheel-standing demon, the 9-second demon of today, I think he'd be thrilled. So again, I like to say this, the good old days are right now. But it is true that, kit cars, as well as roadrunners, Volares, and Aspens, those cars, they are definitely warming up. And $10,000 now in 2021 is a very fair price for a clean example. They're on the rise. Okay, continuing our Volare facts with 634. Volare A43 kit cars were only available in two-tone red. Dodge Aspen kit cars were two-tone blue. V8 power was standard. The 318 with either a 2-barrel or a 4-barrel carburetor. The 360, however, was only available with a 4-barrel carburetor and included large vinyl 360 cubic inch engine displacement decals affixed to the hood. Lesser 318 powered street kit cars were wisely barren of hood displacement markings. There isn't anything sexy about 318 cubic inch callouts. It is true. I mean, if you look at Motor Trend magazine, I think sometime in 1977, a Volare street kit car was on the cover, and what a cool looking thing that was. With the open wheel, 15x8 rims, and those fender flares. The funny thing is, too, by the way, a lot of folks think that today's Dodge Demon and the wide body Challenger stuff, that's a new thing. Well, no, those are add-on plastic flares, just like the kit car of 1977-78. So old things can be new again. Okay, let's move back in time to 1969 with fact 635. The 1969 Plymouth Barracuda hood lived on for several years after the final second generation Barracuda was built in 1969. In a twisted version of Dr. Frankenstein's laboratory, the Barracuda hood, base style, not the simulated hood type, was revived for installation on 1973 through 76 Dodge Darts and Dart Sports. What of 1967 through 68 Barracuda hoods? Well, they fit the 73 Dart hood opening, but the lack of a raised beak added in 1969 results in a prominent contour mismatch with the Dart header panel. It is kind of weird to say that a 67, 68 Barracuda hood was stamped, put away, and then revived in 1973-45, but it happened. Kind of weird. Okay, let's get back to the 60s with more with fact 636. Ever notice that some 1969 Barracudas, Roadrunners, and GTX have front seat headrests while others don't? Federal safety regulations forced Plymouth and the rest of the auto industry to include standard front seat headrests in every new vehicle produced after January 1st of 1969. Before the New Year's Day deadline, dual headrests were a $26.50 option. Headrests could also be ordered individually for $13.25 a piece. I personally helped restore a single headrest, bench seat, 4-speed 1968 Hemi Roadrunner. The bottom of the build sheet was clearly marked, quote, one headrest, unquote, in black grease pencil. Though technically possible, it's doubtful any cars were built with the headrest on the passenger side only. Yeah, it's funny, back when I was just out of college, 1986, my buddy Fred Lee turned me on to a 68 Hemi Roadrunner. It was going to be $10,000. I was going to help restore it. So we spent about 5-6 months messing around with it, and I ended up buying a Charger instead, which I've put on a variety of my social medias and stuff like that. But that Roadrunner was very unusual. It was a light green metallic 4-speed car, and we had the build sheet, and again, it had one headrest on the driver's side only of the front bench seat. It was absolutely factory original upholstery, and I even felt on the passenger side to see if somehow maybe it was covered over the holes for the other headrest, but nothing was there. And it is a fact that for $13.25, you could buy one headrest if you wanted to. And you got to wonder if maybe there was somebody out there whose wife was a safety freak and says, you know, I want a headrest on the passenger side. I don't care if you have one or not. So that could have happened. Crazy, but true. But there's no doubt that I saw personally a one headrest 68 Hemi Roadrunner with a bench. It happened. Okay, more seat data with fact 637. The Bostrom thin line front bucket seats installed in 1964 Hemi lightweight sedans and 1965 A990 sedans and 1968 Hurst Hemi A bodies differed from the seats used in Dodge A100 compact vans and pickup trucks in one major detail. While the truck-sourced units were rigid, those destined for passenger car applications featured hinged uprights for easier access to the rear compartment. Truck-sourced seats also had round section welting stitched into the major perimeter seams, while the Superstock upholstery lacked this feature. Over the years, I've built a number of cars with lightweight seats in them, and I always go to the junkyard. I find van seats, or in some cases Jeep CJ. They have the same thin line Bostrom seats, but keep in mind they're technically not 100% because they don't articulate, and they also have a different welting seam on them. With that said, Jim Kramer of Kramer Automotive Specialties in Butler, Pennsylvania, does offer correct upholstery kits to make those seats look correct. But as far as making them articulate and fold, well, I haven't seen anybody make that happen yet. But with that said, you know, with a race Hemi, the back seat area is usually empty, and there's really no reason to go back there anyway. So a rigid front seat is not such a big deal. At least it isn't to me. Okay, let's get on with fact 638, more interior stuff, body and interior stuff, that is. Okay, even though Pontiac's GTO was first on the scene with a plastic-coated Endura front bumper in 1968, Plymouth jumped on the bandwagon in 1970 with the CUDA A12 Elastomeric front bumper option for $66.50. Going a step beyond the GTO, option A22 covered both bumpers, front and rear, in urethane for $121.30. Not to be confused with simple painted steel bumpers, the elastomeric treatment consisted of a flexible plastic coating that added graceful fared-in contours to the bumper ends and eliminated the exposed bolt heads seen on base chrome bumpers. The elastomeric bumper option also included body-colored side mirrors. Of course, we all know about, you know, body-colored bumpers on Challengers and CUDAs, and yes, you could get them front and rear. I will say that Pontiac GTO might have been first, but the GTO never offered a rear rubber-coated bumper. That would have been pretty cool. Never happened. Moving on, more sheet metal information with fact 639. In the early 1960s, the term Hemi fender was used to describe the aluminum 1964 or thin gauge steel 1965 fender panels bolted to lightweight Belvedere 1 race Hemi sedans. By 1970, the phrase Hemi fender focused more on handling than straight line sprints. Thanks to the Hemi CUDA's standard E6015 Goodyear polyglass front tires, the stock fender wheel-lit flanges had to be manually rolled for adequate sidewall clearance. To identify the hand-massaged front fenders, 1970 and 71 Hemi CUDAs bear an additional trim tag stamped with the words Hemi fender. The big E6015 skins were also optional on non-Hemi CUDAs with 340, 383, and 440 power as the U82 tire upgrade package for $47.95. Some of these non-Hemi powered cars are known to have been delivered with Hemi fender tags. So it's kind of funny, can a fender have hemispherical combustion chambers? No, but a fender can have rolled lips for use on a Hemi car. Okay, now let's move on to fact 640, which will be the final fact in this episode number 43. And this is a good one with some Hemi race history. Fact 640. The 1967 Belvedere hardtop RO23 B-stock Hemi package cars, of which 55 were built, carry a unique hood scoop. Shared with same year WO23 Hemi Coronet hardtops, of which another 55 were built, the scoops may look similar to the 1964 A864 and 1965 A990 hood scoops, but they are unique. The 1964 scoops were aluminum, an exotic metal outlawed by the NHRA for 1965. Subsequently, 1965 A990 scoops were made of NHRA-approved thin-gauge steel, but have a more rounded rear contour to suit the 65B body's cowl contour and hood opening cut line. The 1965 factory experimental scoops were class-legal fiberglass, but looked about the same. For the 1967 RO and WO Hemi cars, Chrysler revisited the 1965 A990 steel scoop, but with a straighter trailing edge to match the 1966-67 B-body hood cut line. As with the 1964 and 65 scoops, an aluminum adapter ring was secured to the underside of the hood to direct cool outside air into the Hemi's dual carburetors. Okay, well that wraps up episode 43 and also brings us to the end of the body and interior section of the Plymouth chapter. We come back with episode 44, and that will begin with fact 641, which also starts the engine and drive line chapter of this book. And that's a really, really cool part. We're talking torque flights, Hemis, hyperpacks, yep, everything. And that'll be coming up soon on episode 44. We certainly want to thank our sponsors, High Octane Classics, the Northeast's largest muscle car and supercar dealership, located at 143 Washington Street, Auburn, Massachusetts. High Octane Classics buys and sells and services muscle cars and exotics. Call them at 508-859-4515. And a little sales pitch too. You can still buy Steve Mignonti's 1001 Muscle Car Facts at Barnes & Noble, and of course also on Amazon or other online places, so you can read along at home as you listen to this podcast on Spotify or Google Play or whatever you listen to, or if you watch on the YouTube channel. Speaking of which, the Steve Mignonti YouTube channel is your source for junkyard videos, funny car videos, model car videos, and yes, the Steve Max Muscle Car Show podcast. So we'll be back with episode 44 very soon. Till then, hasta Mignonti.